Long ago, the British came to India, first as traders, but soon with ambitions to rule. They bought guns and cannons, they waged wars, defeated mighty kings, and established their rule over the land. Hidden among the guns and cannons were tiny seeds and animals from distant lands, invasive species that thrived in India's hospitable climate. The British eventually left, but their legacy lived on, not just in the remnants of their governance, but in the invasive species that still haunts India's lands and waters to this day. Hello, my name is Kartikay Bains. I'm 18 years of age, and for the major part of my life, I grew up in an urban area. That is, until 2 years ago, when I had to move to a rural area to complete my 11th and 12th. There, living among the farmers, it was a wonderful experience for me. I got to go on little walks in the forest, and I loved to see plants and animals living in harmony and coexist. That is, until I started to hear from the farmers how certain plants were destroying their crops. And the same was going on in the forest too. Certain plants acting like cancer, killing everything in its way and taking up the nutrients of different plants for themselves, destroying the biodiversity. That is when I got to know about the term invasive species. So what is an invasive species? It's an alien organism that is not native or indigenous of a particular area, and when introduced to that environment, it starts to become overpopulated and harm the environment. Invasive species rapidly reproduce, which makes them capable of taking over large areas quickly, and they start to kill the native plants and animals there, taking up their nutrients for themselves. And the major problem that stands is that they don't have a natural predator. In a healthy ecosystem, if there is a plant that has a tendency to grow and spread around quickly, it always has a natural predator, which will eat it to maintain the balance. But for an invasive species, it lacks a natural predator. Why? Because it does not belong to that ecosystem. Invasive species pose a massive threat that has various negative impacts on the ecosystem. These impacts are split into three categories: economical, ecological, and human health. On an economical scale, I have myself seen farmers' crop get infested with invasive species such as Congress grass and Lantana camera, a bright flower-bearing invasive species that is toxic to the livestock. In fact, a research paper published in 2020 by Indian Agriculture Research Institute shows that Congress grass has caused an estimated crop yield reduction of around 40% in infested fields. This table, made from the research paper published by Indian Agriculture Research Institute, shows that how Parthenium hysterophorus, the scientific name for Congress grass, has alone caused 40% yield loss and 800 crores of negative economic impact. This table is based on a single year's data alone. Apart from that, government officials and activists have also tried to maintain biodiversity by using physical labor and trying to pluck out these invasive plants, but that did not work out as these plants have the ability to grow back in a matter of few days. Taking human health into consideration, the same research paper by Indian Agriculture Research Institute also claims that Congress grass causes dermatitis and respiratory issues in humans in areas with high infestation. Around 30% of the population may experience allergic reaction, which is highly alarming in a country with such a huge population. The ecological impact is by far the worst thing that has happened and something that needs to be talked about more. In a country like India that holds such vast amount of biodiversity, that in fact 4 of the world's 36 biodiversity hotspots are in India alone, have been destroying our biodiversity, reducing it. Water hyacinth, an invasive plant that floats on water bodies, clogs them and reduces the oxygen level, covering whole lakes and rivers and killing everything that is underneath the water. An article by Hindustani Times shows that the Pune Municipal Corporation has spent well over 20 crores in the past decade trying to remove this little plant from the Muna Muthil river. Yet, it keeps on regrowing and reappearing because water hyacinth has the ability to regrow within a span of 15 days, and it can even double its population in a span of 2 weeks. Water hyacinth is by far one of the few invasive species that have had the most negative impact on Indian water bodies. In fact, a research conducted on Lotak Lake in Manipur shows the before and after infestation of the water body by water hyacinth. As you can see on the chart shown, before the infestation there were 60 fish species in the water body, but instantly after the infestation this number was cut down by half. This harmless looking plant instantly killed 30 fish species after infesting that lake. How do we stop all this harm that is happening to our ecosystem, how do we prevent the destruction of our biodiversity? There are several methods that people are using to keep invasive species under control, such as use of natural predators. The enemy of my enemy is my friend is something we have all heard once or twice. And this is what this technique is based upon. Invasive species lack a natural predator because they don't belong to that ecosystem. They're originally from another ecosystem where they had a natural predator. Introducing that same predator in this new ecosystem can somewhat help you control or eradicate this invasive species. But it has its own few limitations. For example, the new introduced natural predator should all be male. Why? Because there's a chance that they might reproduce and become invasive themselves, repeating the whole cycle. And even if we ensure that all the newly introduced predators are male, there's a chance that there is something already in that ecosystem that might eradicate this newly introduced natural predator, or they might not be able to adapt to this new ecosystem. So this whole method is very, very, very situational. Other than that, there is a very beneficial technique that can be used to control invasive species. What if we were able to create startups that use these invasive species as raw material, with startup being a popular choice? One intriguing area of opportunity lies in tackling invasive species. By developing startups focused on controlling or eradicating these harmful organisms, teams can not only address a pressuring environmental issue, but also create sustainable businesses. Many startups around the globe have already been doing that. Companies like Cohort and Invasive are using invasive species as raw material to make products out of them and are selling them at a profit. India with high unemployment rate, this can prove very beneficial. The only other way to control invasive species is through prevention or early detection. Spreading awareness about these species and having rapid response teams that can quickly respond to new invasions and eradicate invasive species before they become established. But realistically, all these methods are not effective and are very situational. The only way we can preserve the beautiful biodiversity of our country is through group effort and spreading awareness about these harmful organisms. We are one of the 7 countries in the world that is rapidly losing their biodiversity and is highly infested with invasive species. In fact, in the graph shown in front of you, you can see how over the course of few years, we have lost about 60% of our biodiversity. I want all of us to change that and work towards spreading word about what is happening to our ecosystem and fight back. It is within our power to turn the tide. Imagine a future where the lush forests, thriving wetlands, and diverse wildlife of India are preserved, not only for us, but also for the generations to come. Let us all work together and let us achieve our freedom from these parasites left behind by the Britishers. Let's get rid of this colonial baggage that they have left us with and restore the beautifully diverse ecosystem that our country has to offer. Together, we can safeguard India's biodiversity and leave behind a thriving ecosystem, a testament to our commitment and a love for this magnificent land. Thank you.